man armed with an assault rifle burst into a Washington, D.C. pizzeria yesterday. Police say he claimed he was there to self-investigate an outrageous and completely false online conspiracy theory. An imagined pedophilia ring supposedly being run out of the pizzeria that somehow involved Democrats, including Hillary Clinton. Well, the suspect identified as 28-year-old Edgar Madison Welch. It is a clear case of real-life consequences of fake news. Let's discuss now. Brian Stelter's here. He is CNN's senior media correspondent. CNN political commentators Peter Beinart and Kayleigh McEnany join us, as well as Mark Lamont Hill. Good evening to all of you. Brian, you first. You have been talking a lot about fake news during this election. This is a prime example of what can happen when people latch onto these conspiracy theories. Is there a way, do you think, to keep this fake news from circulating and inspiring these extremist views?
This is the question I dread.
Not always extremist.
This is the hard question. This is the question that doesn't have a satisfying answer right now. There are lots of things individuals can do. There are some things Facebook and Twitter and Google can do. Some things that newsrooms can do. You know, Don, I didn't take Pizzagate seriously when it started to come out in early November, because I thought it was so ludicrous, so disgusting. People trying to link Clinton, these Clinton haters trying to link her to a pedophilia ring. I just dismissed it. Well, maybe I shouldn't have. You know, maybe we should have taken it more seriously, tried to debunk it more clearly early on. Thankfully, the Washington Post, BuzzFeed, others did do that, did good work on that in November. But, you know, there are steps we can take, but there's no satisfying answers to this very systemic problem.
But that's hard, because then you give life to it. Then you give credence to it when you report it legitimately. But the interesting thing, I said extremist views. During the campaign, there were some very rational people who I thought before, and they started believing these things that were, Mark, I mean, don't you agree? And I was like, you can't possibly believe that, and they did.
Right. The amazing thing is how committed people can be to holding on to a position despite all evidence to the contrary. If you have a belief in something, or if you want to believe something to be true, you can debunk the story, you can challenge the story, you can give as much life to the story as you want. There will be people who will still tweet the story, believe the story, share the story, and argue the story down. That's what's so scary. This moment, this Trump moment, is kind of a post-fact moment. We don't care what the facts are. We want to believe what we want to believe regardless of what the facts say, and that's very, very dangerous.
And that's not just true on the right either. There are lots of liberals who want to believe lies as well. So I just want to point out, although there's a lot of talk about this on the right now, it is a bipartisan problem, as Matt Lewis said earlier.
Peter, you look flummoxed.
Right. It is a bipartisan problem, and yet we have now the specter of Trump's potential national security advisor being someone who actually sent out a tweet sent out a tweet of a story suggesting that Hillary Clinton was involved in sex crimes with children, and his son, who is now part of the transition, has been repeatedly sending out these tweets. So last I checked, there was no national security advisor in the Obama administration who was sending out those kind of tweets. So yes, both sides have problems, but right now we are in a really unprecedented situation where not only are these conspiracy theories, but you have Donald Trump's national security advisor and his national security advisor's son who are actually propagating them.
Yeah, before, Kayleigh, here's what I want to ask you about it, because he's talking about Mike Flynn's son, Trump's pick for national security advisor. Here's what he tweeted. He said, until Pizzagate proven to be false, it'll remain a story. The left seems to forget the hashtag Podesta emails and the many other coincidences tied to it. Go on, what do you make of this?
Michael Flynn's son should not have sent out that tweet, and given this story, which has no legitimacy, any sort of legs or legitimacy, the pizzeria definitely has what I would see as a libel suit on their hands. That being said, I appreciate the Washington Post for once pointing out nuance. They pointed out the fact that Michael Flynn, the elder, actually was referring to something entirely different than Pizzagate. He was asking questions related to a man named Jeffrey Epstein, and there were some questions there about Bill Clinton taking some flights with this guy who had been a pedophile. Whether he should have gone down that road is an open question, but good for the Washington Post to point out that there is a difference, that Mike Flynn, the national security advisor, was not promoting Pizzagate. It was his son. His son should not have done it, but I do think that that's an important distinction.
But he also, General Flynn has also promoted conspiracy theories in the past. Last month, here's what he tweeted. He said, you decide NYPD blows whistle on new Hillary emails, money laundering, sex crimes with children, etc. Must read. So he wasn't, according to the Washington Post and it wasn't this particular one, but he is still national security advisor, at least to be the national security advisor, and he is still promoting, conspiracy theories and fake news.
But as the Washington Post said, but as the Washington Post said, he was not promoting, this is a quote from them, a quote, full-blown conspiracy theory. He was asking questions that sources like the New York Post were asking. So I think there's a difference when you ask questions aimed that newspapers were asking than floating a baseless conspiracy theory like the 9/11 truther theory, which I'd love for Peter Beinart to disown from his wing of his wing of the extreme ideologies.
I have never had any connection in my life in any way to the 9/11
You're
conspiracy.
a leftist, so yeah. If you want to implicate the right with this,
Kayleigh, I mean, this is like
hold on, one at a time.
Kind of like a kind of bizarre red herring. What we're talking about, what Don was asking about, is the fact that the guy who's going to be National Security Advisor, you're right, it's a different allegation of Hillary Clinton involved with pedophilia. But the question is, especially when you have a candidate like Donald Trump who shoots from the hip like this, do you really, no, sorry, let me finish. Do you really, Kayleigh, please let me finish. Do you really want a National Security Advisor who's sending out news links accusing the Democratic candidate of connection to pedophilia, a charge which is just totally absurd?
Peter Beinart, every time you're confronted with a very difficult question, you call it a bizarre red herring.
It was. I have no connection to 9/11 conspiracy theories in my life.
So you have to, as a mainstream leftist, you have to confront. As a mainstream leftist, you have to confront the extremists on your side, in your party. And those are 9/11 truthers. Those are people like Michael Moore, who ask completely bizarre things. So if you want to have me talk about the extremists in my party, you must talk about the extremists.
Michael Moore is not a senior advisor and is going to be a part of any campaign or administration. Go ahead, Mark.
He's a prominent leftist. He's a prominent leftist.
Okay, yeah, but the conversation here isn't whether or not prominent leftists have opinions that we may disagree with, and I wouldn't necessarily put Michael Moore in the box that you just did. But beyond that, again, this is a question of whether senior level advisors in a presidential administration,
the National Security
have
Advisor,
views. Of all things, the National Security Advisor. If Susan Rice walked in the building and said, you know what, I don't think 9/11 happened, or I think that Snapple is created by the KKK to, you know what I mean, to defertilize black folk, a narrative from the 80s that came out. If these kinds of things were circulating in the White House, we would think that it was bonkers. And the problem is that the Trump administration is normalizing these narratives, and at times Donald Trump himself has tweeted things that are absolutely baseless and absurd. And that is what the problem is. In fact, you have a president who himself is a birther. That itself speaks to the challenge here and the problem we have here, and why I say we're in a post-fact moment.
Earlier today on CNN,
facts matter.
Earlier today on CNN, I said Trump's a conspiracy theorist, and for some reason it got picked up by blogs and websites as if that was a surprising or controversial statement. It's just a fact, and it's, you might say it's okay. Trump is many things. He's beloved by many people. He's many things, but one of the things he is a conspiracy theorist. And we saw that last week with him saying millions of people voted illegally. That's a conspiracy theory. There's no proof of it. We're talking about opinions here as well as facts, and we should have opinions flourish. I want the Michael Moores of the world and the General Flynns of the world to share all of their opinions on Twitter. But we've got to figure out ways to come together on some of the facts, at least just some of the facts. And I think why people are so uncomfortable right now, 7 days after the election, is that it feels like we're partially post-truth. Hopefully we're not all post-truth at this point, but some of us feel like we're in a post-truth world.
Right, and what's really significant is that Paul Ryan, when confronted about Donald Trump's claims about illegal voting, right, which no one has found any evidence for, would not condemn it. That's what's really remarkable, is you have Republicans who during the campaign were willing to some degree to stand up to Donald Trump, who now are just caving in.
So you're saying, as the Daily Show put it, that it's the enablers that are actually worse than Donald Trump, because they actually enable him without even saying, without even having the backbone to tell him the truth about himself?
Look, the Republicans are running Washington right now, right? Democrats are in the minority. So if someone is going to stand up to Donald Trump when he says things that are blatantly factually inaccurate and dangerous, it's going to have to be people like Paul Ryan, and they're not doing it.
All right, we'll be right back. We'll be right back. Back now with Brian Salter, Peter Beinart, Kayleigh McEnany, and Mark Lamont Hill. As much as I love the other conversation, I want to talk about this as well. Let's talk about Trump's pick for Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. It's Ben Carson. He is a neurosurgeon, and many say that on paper he lacks significant experience in housing and urban development. What do you think? Good move, Peter?
I think he means well. The question is, what are his qualifications, as you said? I mean, his own close advisor, Armstrong Williams, just said a couple of days earlier that he didn't think that Carson would take the job because he doesn't have any experience running any kind of government agency like this, and he hasn't really shown any expertise in housing and urban development policy. I would love to be surprised, but I think the question is, what on earth, besides the fact that he grew up poor and in an inner city, what on earth qualifies him for this job?
Let's put up the tweet that you're talking about, or put up what he said. No, I'm sorry, it's what he said. He said he's never run, this is Armstrong Williams, who's a close advisor to Ben Carson. He's never run an agency, and it's a lot to ask. He is a neophyte, and that's not his strength. The last thing he would want to do was take a position that could cripple the presidency. So how do you respond to that, Kaylee?
I think he's extremely qualified. Not only does, as Peter pointed out, he has a passion for this because he grew up in poverty and worked his way out of it. Not only that, but I mean, this is a world-class neurosurgeon who Harvard Center of Leadership gave him a leadership award for being one of the greatest leaders in his field. He sat on the board of companies like Kellogg. He was the head at Johns Hopkins of the Neuroscience Center. Not only that, he's a problem solver. He devised the first method to separate conjoined twins. This is a leader. This is a problem solver, and this is someone who's passionate. And look, the guys we have right now, the so-called experts in Washington, clearly aren't doing their job, and they're not getting it done. So let's give a shot to someone who's one of the most extraordinary minds I think that we have.
Mark?
Wait a minute. So, and I love you, Kayla. I'm just baffled by this. First of all, you trotted out you said he's extremely qualified, and then you explained all the ways that he's a really talented neurosurgeon. Being a neurosurgeon doesn't make you qualified to be the head of HUD. No part of that does.
He's a leader.
Yes, he's a great leader.
But wouldn't he be more qualified, Mark? Wouldn't he be more qualified to be the head of Health and Human Services as a neurosurgeon than he would be to Housing and Urban Development?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leadership skills are not transferable. You know what I mean? Like Ghostface Killer's the leader of Wu-Tang Clan, right? LeBron James the leader of Cleveland Cavaliers. It doesn't mean they should be the leader of housing and urban development. He himself said, I don't know how to run an office. I don't know how to run a bureau. I don't know how to handle bureaucracy. I don't have any experience in government. So if he says that himself, why do you choose him to be the leader of one of the most significant departments in America? And
I think his own comments against the job is notable. I do think leadership skills are transferable,
exactly.
though. That part I would disagree with.
Some are. No, some are, some are not. Coming out of poverty doesn't make you qualified. Coming out of public housing doesn't make you qualified to run public housing. I mean, by that logic, half of Black America should be the head of HUD. It doesn't
but
make
Mark,
sense.
The leaders,
we can do better than this.
Mark, the leaders and the experts that you extol, though, are the ones who gave us the subprime housing crisis, one of the greatest foreclosure crises we've seen in this country's history. These are the so-called experts that you extol and you want to be there. Let's give Ben Carson a chance.
This is such a dangerous logic.
Well, those experts are talking. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is the logic that I find so baffling. It's like, yes, people in government who actually have experience may have made really big mistakes, right? Just like people who know how to fly airplanes sometimes screw up and get it wrong, right? It's not an argument for taking people who have never flown an airplane and putting them in the cockpit, right? The fact that experts make mistakes is not an argument for putting people with no experience in these jobs.
Right. The Democratic
Ben Carson's just the guy that was on a plane before. You know what I mean? Like what?
Nancy Pelosi calls Carson a disconcerting and disturbingly unqualified choice. What do you say to that, Brian? Are you okay? You all right, Brian? All right, go ahead, Mark. What do you make of that?
She's absolutely right. Everything else I said tonight aside, there's another fundamental challenge here is that Ben Carson has made his bones as a Republican speaker by talking about how he doesn't believe that government should be supporting people in the very ways that HUD is designed to do so. It's hard for him to lead urban development. It's hard for him to support public housing. It's hard for him to push forward this idea of integration of public housing if he doesn't fundamentally believe that the government should have that relationship to its citizens. So to me, it's just a backwards role for him in any sense. He's just not the right fit for this. There are so many better people. And I agree with Peter. You don't, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let's hope it's not a joke, actually, because it's an important job.
Mark, you're on fire tonight. Sorry about that. Anyway, thank you all. Appreciate it. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.